Good morning. It's good to be here, and it's good to be with you. I'm Jim Morgan, and I'm a member of the UU Fellowship of Clemson's Worship Associate Team. Each week, this community comes together to participate in music, worship, and reflection. This is where we seek to have our hearts opened and our imaginations fired. This is the place that reminds us that we are deeply connected to one another and all living things. Even though our building is closed, we gather together for weekly online worship. At 11:30 on Sunday mornings, we also gather for social connection and the sharing of joys and concerns in our Zoom meetings. Please join us. If you're joining us for the first time this morning, then welcome. This fellowship is a religious community grounded in the heritage and principles of Unitarian Universalism. We seek to create a loving community, inspire joy and spiritual growth, and support courageous action. All are welcome, regardless of religious background, political persuasion, ethnicity, age, ability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression. If you have a desire to explore questions of truth and meaning and are respectful of our diversity of people and beliefs, you've found kindred spirits here. If you'd like more information about this fellowship or Unitarian Universalism, please see information about us on our website, uufc.org. And if you're interested in getting our weekly newsletter so you can get connected to our community for online social events, our weekly sharing of joys and concerns, and our collective efforts to support local social justice work, then please reach out to the office by email on our website. You can also find us on Facebook. Here are a few things going on this week and also in the near future at the fellowship. Through April the 30th, UU is hosting a virtual egg hunt. It's an opportunity to go through a series of links on different web pages for different UU congregations throughout the world and find out some more information about them and also take part in a fun activity together. There are several things that happen every week. We have bingo every Thursday at 6:30. That's done through a Zoom meeting. Sunday worship every Sunday at 10:30, and right now that's happening online. You can find us on YouTube or on the church website. There is social time after the service every Sunday at 11:30. That is also done through Zoom. And then every week there is Coffee with Christina. That's Wednesday at 2 p.m. And you can find out more information about all these through the church newsletter or through the website. April 21st, UUFC is sponsoring a dinner at Our Daily Rest. Our Daily Rest is an organization that feeds those who are homeless and food insecure in Seneca, and they are in need of folks who are willing to bring food to help out with that meal. You can find out how to get involved in the newsletter or on the church website. Members of the fellowship are auctioning off the use of their home in Polly's Island. You can find out more information about how to be a part of that auction, and all of the proceeds will go to benefit the fellowship here. And then finally, the Clemson Area Pledge to End Racism is hosting a workshop in May. Clemson Area Pledge to End Racism is an effort that was started by members of this fellowship and also a number of other congregations in Clemson that is aimed towards educating and also action steps for how to make the Clemson area more equitable and educate ourselves about racial injustice. And we're excited for there to be another opportunity to take part. If you'd like to participate, you can find more information about that in the newsletter and on the website. Our opening words this morning come from Tim Haley. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love, to give thanks for the gift of life. We know we are on our pilgrimage here, but a brief moment in time. Let us open ourselves here, now, to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely. of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on this earth.
My name is Lily, and I'm laying the chalice. And our words of affirmation are, we gather together in spirit of love with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another.
Good morning. It's good to be with you all again. On April 8th, the United States observed Holocaust Remembrance Day to honor the memory of the nearly 6 million Jewish people who lost their lives in Nazi concentration camps during World War II. When we learn in school about this dark period in history, many of us read the diary of a young girl named Anne Frank, whose family hid in an attic along with another family from July 1942 until August 1944, when they were captured by German soldiers and taken to concentration camps, where Anne and her sister Margot would ultimately lose their lives. This morning, our friend Heidi is going to read a story about Anne Frank for us that's told from a very special point of view.
The tree in the courtyard, looking through Anne Frank's window. By Jeff Gottesfeld, illustrated by Peter McCarty. The two of us looked out at the blue sky, the bare chestnut tree glistening with dew, the seagulls and other birds glinting with silver as they swooped through the air, and we were so moved and entranced that we couldn't speak. Anne Frank. The tree in the courtyard lived for 172 years. She was a horse chestnut. Her leaves were green stars, her flowers foaming cones of white and pink. Each fall, she let spiky seed pods clatter to earth. In winter, her bare boughs etched a lattice against the pale blue sky. She grew near a city canal. Seagulls flocked to her shade. For the first part of her life, her world was the courtyard. She was not yet tall enough to see beyond the homes, workshops, and factories. Then one spring, she stretched above the orange roofs and took in the beautiful city. She spread roots and reached skyward in peace until war came. Explosions shook the ground. Rockets split the night. Strangers invaded the city. The first winter of the war, a new owner came to one of the factories. He had a wife and 2 daughters. The older girl was quiet and proper. The younger was lively with dark hair. When they visited the factory, she would play by the canal or write by the kitchen window. She wrote for hours. Even when her father called her, she wrote. The tree loved the sight of her. In the heat of midsummer, the girl stopped coming. The tree dropped worried leaves until she spotted the girl in the factory annex. Her family was there, too. A father, mother, and a boy soon joined them. Later, another man and a black cat. The girl and her father stitched ragged curtains for the main windows. From time to time, a face might peer out between the cracks. The only clear view was into the attic. There, the girl would read, stroke the cat, and brush her unruly hair. Sometimes she stared at the sky. Mostly, she wrote. She filled a red and white diary. When warplanes roared and bombs rocked the annex, the girl fled into her father's arms. She did not come outside. The tree did not understand. The war dragged on. Once, through the curtains, the tree watched the people light candles and sing. The girl grew pale and thin. A young woman helper who worked in the factory brought her pens and paper. The girl wrote and wrote some more. She filled page after page. The fourth winter of the war, the tree saw the boy with the girl. They would talk and laugh or simply gaze out the attic window at her bare branches glistening with dew, so moved and entranced they couldn't speak. They kissed. The tree made her blossoms extra bright that spring. Late one summer morning, men in gray uniforms came to the factory. They ripped the curtains from the annex windows, dumped the girls' papers to the floor, and herded the people into waiting black cars. The cars sped off. The woman from the factory gathered the girls' writings. The tree kept a vigil. Summer, autumn, winter, spring. The seasons changed. The war ended. Only the father returned. He was thin with sad eyes as he padded through the annex like a living ghost. The woman helper gave him the girls' writings. They cried. The tree lived on, but she was never the same. Time passed. To her surprise, other children came to the annex. They walked where the girl had walked and sat where she had sat. Some found a wind-blown seed pod on the pavement or gazed up at the tree, so moved and entranced that they couldn't speak. Year after year they came. By the end of the century, the tree had lived a full life. She was ready to die. Many strangers came to try to save her. They injected her with medicine. They trimmed her crown and cut sprouts from her trunk. They built her a steel support and collected her seed pods like gold coins. The tree recalled how few had tried to save the girl. The summer the girl would have turned 81, a storm snapped the tree's trunk in two. Just like the girl, she passed into history. Just like the girl, she lives on. Her seeds and saplings have been planted with love. One grows in New York City, where the Twin Towers once stood. Another grows at an Arkansas high school. Still more grow in England, Argentina, France, all around the world. Though the new trees are still young, children come to visit. They read the girl's words about a chestnut in a courtyard glistening with dew, and touch the thin trunks. They are so entranced that they cannot speak.
The journey of life brings pleasures and pains, satisfactions and regrets, and as persons who are seeking truth and meaning, the task is one of honoring such experiences as well as integrating them. We fit the pieces together, and in so doing, we find the larger shape of our lives and we reach forward. Part of this process is the ritual of the sharing of joys and concerns, to which we now turn. I light this candle for those in our community who are in pain, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Know that you are not alone, we are with you. Please reach out to us and let us know what you need, and we will continue reaching out to you. This candle is also in honor of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. We understand the responsibility to protect the lessons and the legacy of Holocaust history and to defend the truth it tells us about humanity and all the possibilities of who we can become. This is for those who are still dealing with all the effects of the pandemic, with work, with waiting for a vaccine, with dealing with the pain of having been ill prior. We also light this candle for the joy of seeing this pandemic and the light coming to the end of the tunnel. We are starting to imagine what it would be like to be together again physically. And that is a joyous event, certainly. What touches one touches us all. We are grateful for these sacred connections that enable us to remember, to celebrate, to love, and to care. Today's prayer begins with a small quote from Velveteen Rabbit and a story. "Real isn't how you were made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. It doesn't happen all at once. You become. It takes a long time." Reverend Amanda Pape shares a personal story about becoming. She says, "When I was pregnant with my second child, one of the things I was most curious and anxious about was telling my first child of her expected sibling. She was 3 at the time, and I wasn't sure how much she would be able to grasp about the major change that our family was about to undergo. I was ready to answer any questions she might have honestly and age appropriately. I started off by being as literal as I could. Guess what? You're going to have a sibling. There's a baby growing in my tummy." That seemed like a good start, though I was ready to switch over to the anatomically correct uterus if needed. But the older sibling isn't a scientist, it turns out. She's a philosopher. and so she asked one question I hadn't prepared for. "Oh," she said, "who is it going to be?" "I don't know," I said. "We're going to have to wait and see." Isn't that always the way? We're still waiting to see who that second child is going to be, although she's been with us for 7 years now and is very much her own person. But she's always changing and growing, becoming someone new all the time. And her older sister is, and as I am, and as you are. Sometimes our becomings are dramatic. We realize that the gender we thought we were, or others thought we were, isn't correct after all. Or we discover that the career we had, or that the marriage we had begun really isn't who we are, or no longer fits for who we have become. Sometimes, though, our becoming is gradual, a kind of unfolding and changing and shifting always. It is like this, lifelong shifting, which isn't to say we aren't already who we are. We are that too. We are already ourselves, the minute we are born and every minute after. However long our lives end up being, even when they are cut painfully and tragically short, we are our full selves for every second, every month, every year of our lives. And we are also becoming ourselves, growing and stretching. In the growing time of my life, my soul experienced something like the growing pains I experienced in my legs as a child. I became a minister, a mother, a middle-aged person. It's usually been uncomfortable and almost always inconvenient. The old me seemed fine, the one I was just yesterday. Why bother with all this shifting? And yet when I come out to the other side, I invariably think, ah, yes, this is the me I was supposed to become. This is who I am. Until next time, who is it going to be? Who are you going to be today and tomorrow? Who are we all becoming together? Let us share in a prayer for each of us today in our collective becoming. Spirit of love and life, come to me in this moment. Wrap around the fullness of me, the nowness of me, the me-ness of me. Let me breathe in who I am right now. Wrap around the fullness of me and leave room. Leave room for the rest of me, the me I haven't yet discovered, the me I am becoming. Let me breathe in who I'm going to be. Spirit of love and life, stay with me as I become. May this prayer for me, for you, for all of us, guide us forward as we become who we are every day. Amen.
I am all I have done.
One of the books that I have read and reread in the recent years is titled Love and Death: My Journey Through the Valley of the Shadow by Reverend Dr. Forrest Church. My copy has so many underlined passages and small tabs for thoughts for future sermons, dog-eared pages and notes in the margins. I recently found that it was available as an audio version read by Forrest Church himself. As I listened to it, I wept, tears of joy and sorrow and awareness. I was aware of how I have changed and become into myself since the first time I read it. Reverend Dr. Forrest Church was a Unitarian Universalist minister. He authored 20 books from topics ranging from American history to liberal religion and spirituality. He served as the minister of the All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church in New York City, and his ministry lasted for almost 30 years. During his ministry, his congregation became a center for spiritual thinking and seeking, and a beacon of social outreach into the community. When he was called to All Souls, they had about 100 members, and by the time that he was done there, the membership exceeded 1,000. What an amazing ministry. Reverend Peter Friedrichs describes Church's ministry as public, prolific, and powerful, and it was. As with all of us, frail and fallible human beings, Forrest fought his demons too. In the year 2000, he acknowledged his alcoholism. He joined AA and remained sober for the remaining years of his ministry and his life. He faced other struggles as well, and what made him perhaps a popular pastor and preacher is that he faced them head on. He did so publicly, and he used them to inform his ministry and his writing. In February 2008, he was diagnosed for the second time with esophageal cancer, and it was aggressive. The doctors expected him to live but a few or more months. And with this clarity of the end of his life in hand, Forrest did what he did best. He took his pencil and paper and he began to write. The book that resulted from these efforts is the beloved book, Love and Death: My Journey Through the Valley of the Shadow. In this book, Forrest Church revealed a mantra that he had come to live by later in life. It is, want what you have, do what you can, and be who you are. Want what you have, do what you can, and be who you are. These come together as a philosophy, a theology, a statement of faith, and a way of life. And I have been moved by imagining my life following a mantra such as this. Forrest Church admitted that of these three, the be who you are was the hardest of them all. Simply put, he said, to be who you are is not to fake your existence. He wrote that each of us is unique, with unique flaws and gifts. The world doesn't owe us a living. We owe the world a living, our very own. He tells the story in Love and Death of the opportunity he had himself as the son of the U.S. Senator Frank Church to enter politics. He was working on a doctorate in theology, and he took time off to help his father with his political campaign. And it was successful, and Forrest Church himself caught the eye of political leaders. They suggested he also enter politics. He loved his father, respected his father's work, and wanted to be more like him. So the invitation to politics was alluring. Yet his father offered his son advice. You are to live your own life, not the life I've lived. Finish your studies in theology and then reconsider politics. And thankfully, Church listened to his father. Later, he wrote that in completing his doctorate and staying the course with his studies in theology, he found a calling. I answered a call that was mine, he said, and not someone else's. He goes on to tell us to envy another's skills, looks, or gifts, rather than embracing your own nature and call is to fail in two respects. It fails because you are unsuccessfully trying to be who you aren't, and in so doing, we fail to become who we are. Many of the books on my shelf have been marked when it comes to writing of the becoming who we are or of a calling. I myself was called to ministry at the age of 19 as a young person, having grown up in Unitarian Universalist congregations. I saw the direct impact that ministers had on the lives of others. And I too wanted such a vocation. But I knew I was much too young to answer the call to ministry at the time. But had I listened to it more closely, it could direct me in the work that I did in the future years to move me closer to that vocation. I tried to do so. One of the things that got in my way was done with love. My mother, a successful entrepreneur, wanted me to follow in her footsteps and buy the family catering business that she had started more than 20 years prior. She lovingly wanted financial security for me, and I honor that. So I gave it a try. I actually ran the company for 7 years after college, and I learned a lot, but it distracted me from my own dreams. I did learn many things, but I also learned it was not for me. I still dreamed of ministry. Joseph Campbell, the professor of anthropology and the author of many volumes of comparative theology and philosophy, wrote that if a person has a sense of a personal call, that feeling that there is an adventure out there for them, and if one doesn't follow that, but remains in society because it is safe and secure, then the life inside them dries up. And this was the case for me. Reverend Peter Friedrich adds about Forrest Church and the conversation about calls, that sometimes the influences that exert the power over us are more subtle than this. We grew up in a family of achievers, and although nothing is explicitly stated, we incorporate the message that that is what is expected of us. A parent's well-intentioned action sends a signal of what they hope for us, and we receive the gesture, consciously or subconsciously, as a mandate. If you hear things like, "You're really good at math, maybe you could be a scientist," enough times as a child, you're likely to believe that you should become a scientist, and that your passion for dance or music or social work should be misplaced. By the same token, if over and over again you hear the message, you'll never amount to anything, that too becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The forces that dictate against us being and becoming who we are powerful and many. To be who we are can be like swimming upstream against a strong current of expectations and what can be called the tyranny of the shoulds. As if these forces aren't enough to defeat us, to be who we are is made all the more challenging by our lack of self-knowledge and self-awareness that can last throughout an entire lifetime. Friedrich says, perhaps the greatest challenge to living into Forrest Church's mandate to be who you are is discovering who and what that is. So who are you to be? What are you called to? A call is not often a voice from God heard on the road to Damascus. It often could be quiet listening and the hearing of your own internal song. Parker Palmer writes 2 of this in his wonderful book on vocation, Let Your Life Speak. He articulates what I believe is the most compelling spiritual challenge that we face as individuals and the reward we gain by doing the work of fulfilling and finding our calling. Our deepest calling is to grow into our authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who we ought to be. And as we do so, we will not only find the joy that every human being seeks, we will also find our path of authentic service in the world. When we can be of authentic service in the world, we too can discover our true selves and claim our wholeness in order to fulfill that other mandate we receive from Forrest Church to do what we can. When we fail to discover our true selves, when we cling to the ideas that are nothing more than the masks we wear or the fulfillment of the expectations of others, it is simply to remain the victims of our own condition. Reverend Friedrich reflects on this, that we become disempowered puppets, actors playing out a script written by someone else. We blame God. We blame our parents. We blame our partners. We blame ourselves for our circumstances. But when we do the hard work of discovering our true and authentic selves, of claiming our whole selves, we are called to live into those selves, embracing one's wholeness. Parker Palmer writes, makes life more demanding, because once you do that, you must live into your whole life. You must, in the words of Forrest Church, be who you are. To be who you are is to offer the world the greatest gift we can give, to invest our lives in all that we do with sincerity, authenticity, and deep commitment leads us into relationships with others with authenticity. And in entering into those relationships are sacred in the true meaning of that word. We cannot help but bring out our collective power against the forces of injustice, hatred, and oppression. When we live into our authentic selves, we will create a collective wholeness that will heal not just ourselves, but the entire world. May we be who we are becoming day by day, and claim our whole selves. May it bless the world. May it bless your life. May it be so.
Who I am today will not be who I am tomorrow, and who I am tomorrow will keep changing every day. And all the things I learned might fill my heart with joy or sorrow, and everything I learned might make me want to change my ways. Oh, there is nothing, no thing that ever stays the same. That is the one thing, one thing that life does guarantee. There is no one on earth, no one who knows what path their life will take, and no one knows what I will see as I keep becoming me. The family you were raised in does not dictate who you marry. The country you were born in won't decide where you are buried, and all you once believed might leave you stranded on an island where the only way back home is to abandon it as lies. And there is nothing, no thing that ever stays the same. That is the one thing, one thing that life does guarantee. There is no one on earth, no one who knows where their lives will be, what path their life will take, and no one knows what I will see as I keep becoming me, becoming me. I must stay open to the change, curious and free, and always ready to be rearranged. There is nothing that ever stays the same. That is the one thing that life does guarantee. There is no one on earth, no one who knows what course their life will take, and no one knows who I will be as I keep becoming me, as I keep becoming me, as I keep becoming me, as I keep becoming.
Let us close our service today with these words of Parker Palmer. Our deepest calling is to grow into our authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who we ought to be. And as we do, we will not only find the joy that every human being seeks, we will also find our path of authentic service in the world. May we be of service in the world, to ourselves, to each other, and to our community. Go in peace, my friends. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.